So this talk is WRTC 2026 is coming to the UK by Mark Haynes, M0DXR. In a sentence, WRTC is the Olympics of the amateur radio world. The presentation will explain what WRTC is about and provide an overview of what the UK's organising committee are planning for the 2026 event. And you can find out how you can take part in this once-in-a-lifetime event, either as a spectator, a volunteer, a competitor, or a referee. Now, a couple of words about Mark. First licensed age 12. Mark is a keen HF and VHF contester. He has operated from around 40 DXCCs in DXpeditions and contest styles, including D68C, a whole list of others, until I get down to P3F. He currently holds many CQ Worldwide country records. He founded Contest University UK following the establishment of the US Contest University. He was RSGB Young Radio Amateur of the Year in 1999-2000. He's a member of many clubs such as FOC and the CQ Worldwide Contest Committee. In 2014, he joined G0CKV as a competitor at WRC Boston. Professionally, Mark works in the ground transportation industry as a senior project manager, providing rail signalling solutions on London's urban railway network. So please let us welcome Mark for this talk.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction, Stuart, and a very good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the RSGB convention once again, and this time to present a topic that is very close to my heart, WRTC, and I'm honoured that we are in a position to say we are hosting this 10th WRTC in a little under 3 years' time. So what I'll cover, as Stuart mentioned there, is a bit of history on WRTC, what it's all about, give you a flavour of the UK Organising Committee's objectives and what we're planning for July 2026. Traditional contesting sort of presents a number of variables that one could argue, and we hear the arguments quite a lot on contest email reflectors, and we read it in RADCOM, that it's very difficult for some people to compete because of the variables, and it's true, there are a number of variables. Some of that has to do with geography. As you can see here, you've got some stations that are perched on hilltops with big stacked arrays compared to that amateur in the valley who can't compete, and it becomes very difficult to actually work out who is the best contester. So we've got lots of restrictions, and of course DX stations in rare countries will attract much more attention and have more chance at scoring well. But of course there is still that operator competence piece that comes in. So what do we do about that to actually find out who the best operators are and present a platform to allow us to measure that and celebrate that? What if all operators were in the same geographic region, they had identical antenna systems, and everyone was limited to 100 watts output power? And just to add to the pressure, allocate a referee to actually look over those operators to make sure they are adhering to the rules of the competition. So that's where WRTC comes in. WRTC stands for the World Radio Sport Team Championship. It's regarded as the Olympic Games of amateur radio contesting, and it takes place, generally speaking, every 4 years, similar to the Olympic Games. The teams that compete in WRTC consist of 2 operator teams, and they have identical antennas, and they're located in the same geographic area as one another. The operating skill is vitally important in this environment because, believe it or not, 1 or 2 QSOs can determine the difference between a first and second position. This isn't an official logo, so if anyone's watching from the Olympics, please don't chase me, but this is just demonstrating we do regard it as the Olympics of amateur radio. So a little bit about the rules, the goals of WRTC. So The project is set out to publicise radio sport, to promote it within and outside of amateur radio. It's to facilitate the international gathering of radio amateurs, contesters, to meet. So it's not just a contest, it's an opportunity for a social event to get people together and share that common interest. To promote advances in radio sport technology, such as team operating technique, real-time scoring, and real-time scoring is a piece that allows it to be opened up more widely around the world for those not at the event itself. Spectator viewing and education, so using it as a platform to educate people, to get them excited about this fantastic aspect of our hobby. To develop log checking and log reporting, which is advancing every year. We find new ways of adjudication and ensuring that those that are not abiding by the rules are punished. Operator ranking and comparison, and to encourage the growth of radio sport participation worldwide, especially to youth and young adults. So this is a particular focus of WRTC, using it as a platform to help youngsters and youth keep our hobby going in the future and keep that enthusiasm going and spreading the word. And regions with populations that are unrepresented in radio sport. So trying to broaden the geographic horizon to get people involved. The WRTC is overseen by a sanctioning committee, similar to the Olympics again. And the sanctioning committee have communicated to us a 20-year vision for it to be recognised as an international radio sport event, for the competition between teams attracting participants, spectators and mainstream sport media, and the development of radio sport standards for operating, adjudication and technology. So we have to structure our project to fit in with this vision. So a bit about the history of WRTC. I'm interested to know, does anybody know in this room where the first WRTC was held? John, you were the first one with your hand up.
1990 in Seattle.
Top marks, very good. 1990 in Seattle, so a group of radio amateurs in Seattle. They decided that this would be a good thing to do. It actually coincided with the Seattle Goodwill Games, and following that was then in San Francisco 4 years later. It then crossed the pond into Europe, in Slovenia in the year 2000 at the millennium. And just 2 years later on this occasion went to Finland in 2002, down to South America, Brazil in 2006, Russia 2010, and then Boston, USA in 2014, Germany in 2018, and more recently, I'm sure many of us have enjoyed working a lot of the Italian stations in the recent WRTC down in Bologna. And of course, that event was actually the 2022 WRTC delayed 1 year due to the pandemic. And now we are the 10th WRTC. So it's a very interesting history, and we're really excited about the UK event. So a little bit about the team organisation. So we have, I think, all of the organising committee are actually here today at the convention. We have Lee, G0MTN, our Vice Chairman and also Director of Rules and setting the criteria for the qualifying criteria. Fred, G4BWP, who's looking after finance for us. Chris, G0DWV, is heading up our fundraising and sponsorship campaign. Andy, G4PIQ, is in charge of sites and stations, so that's identifying the sites for the 50 operating locations for the stations, and also managing the acquisition of hardware and the selection of that hardware as well. Steve, M1ACB, obviously our governing organisation here in the UK, General Manager, but he's also on our committee and helps bridge the gap between WRTC, the RSGB, and the international organisations, and he'll be heading up volunteers. And then Georgina, M6YGL, who is Director of Hospitality, so she's responsible for finding a venue for the HQ and putting on a programme for the week for the competitors and the visitors. We have an IT team with Tim, GW4VXE, Pete, 2M0SQL, who's been doing a lot of work on our website, and Michael, G7VJR, will offer some IT assistance during the actual contest, and we're hoping to utilise Clublog in that as well. The advisory committee we've established consists of Tim, K3LR, Robert, G3NSM, John, K1AR, Chris, DL1MGB, who was also the chairman of WRTC Germany in 2018, Olaf, G0CKV, Bob, MD0CCE, and Kamal, N3KS. And we have our initial points of contact for the sanctioning committee are K1DG, DL1MGB, and Sugar50 Alpha. So Tina Sugar50 Alpha is the chairman, president of the sanctioning committee. So a little bit about our application journey. So this idea first came about in last December, so it's been live now for about 10 months. But we had to, first of all, convince ourselves that actually we feel like we can go forward with this, and because obviously it's quite a daunting undertaking, actually, on the face of it. So we set up a host committee, and this was all in preparation for submitting a letter of intent to the sanctioning committee. We defined the officers. We proposed a time frame because, of course, we only have 3 years. Usually, you have a 4-year gap, but we're a bit. We've got to be a bit more rapid on our project execution. So we proposed to bring it back in line with the 4-year program, so 2026. And the location, the obvious choice of the location is the southeast of the UK for geographic reasons. I'll come on to that shortly. Then the WRTC Sanctioning Committee acknowledges that and come back to us with clarification questions, and they certainly weren't shy with sharing some of those. We then put forward a preliminary proposal submission. That went in, I think it was about May, that went in finally. We then had a negotiation period where we discussed the questions that had been raised by the sanctioning committee, and we compromised. One of the main compromises that we were discussing were the number of teams. We actually started off with 40 teams. That then increased to 50 because we felt like it was a little bit too much of a drop from previous events, and we would be sort of eliminating a number of worthy qualifiers from reducing the number of teams so much. So we agreed at 50. A bit more pressure on Andy to find an extra 10 sites, and a bit more money needed. The sanctioning committee then evaluated this and selected the host nation, and that was announced at the closing ceremony of WRTC Italy in July. So we're in kind of this orange phase now where we've agreed the qualifying criteria and the contests and the weightings and the points available to the qualifiers. But this will continue on. We need to put forward our proposals for the referee and selection process for referees and the log checking process, which all has to be overseen by the sanctioning committee, and we need to gain their endorsement. And we will then get a final endorsement of the event. So our plan on a page looks something like this. It's not entirely clear for you to see, but we've got a lot going on with upfront mobilization of the project, defining the rules and the qualification criteria. We're in our first sponsorship phase now, so that will extend out to the end of the year. What we've actually done is we've done a deal with the Italians to acquire their antenna kits, which consist of the tri-band Yagi antenna, the mast, all the coax cables, the guys. That's their antenna kit, so we've done a deal with them. So we're actually taking all of the hardware from for their antennas for 2026. So that will all be coming over here, probably on a 40-foot container, some point in the next couple of months. So in order to fund that, our first sponsorship phase will conclude in December, and then we enter our second phase, where we'll be engaging a lot more with radio clubs, corporate sponsors, and individuals. But that has started and is going relatively well, I think we could say at the moment. Next year, we'll start looking at sites. We need to start thinking about site selection and identifying potential cluster sites, which I'll explain in a short while. Volunteers, we had an initial reach out for volunteers during the bid process, and John G4RN helped us with that, and we had an excellent response from the amateur community on expressing their interest. So we're confident that we've got good foundations for that, but obviously we need to mature that as we go along and make sure that expressions of interest are actually followed through with actual input from individuals. That's going to be a real challenge for us. I'm sure with Steve's help we can achieve that. Hardware identification, well, we've already done the first phase of that, and we're acquiring the antennas, so that's the bar that you see here. We'll then have another phase where we're looking at some of the more sort of site-specific hardware pieces that are needed, and then the third phase will be where we trial the hardware in 2025. So we'll set some stations up for the IARU contest in 2025, WRTC style, run them in the contest, and use that as a learning experience for 2026. Promotion runs pretty much all the way through, really. I mean, we've already started promotion, but we're going to need to be reaching out, doing exactly the kind of thing that we're doing here today, and we'll extend that internationally and go to Dayton and Tokyo Hamfest and such like. IT, the website went live at the closing ceremony of Italy, and that's been maturing ever since, and Pete's doing a fantastic job on maintaining that. We've got a platform for the scores development. As we go on through the qualifying contests, obviously there needs to be a platform to show the positioning of each individual and how many points they've accrued during each contest. So that is a platform that will be developed very shortly. And then, of course, we've got the actual hardware required for the stations and the IT to support that, making sure that we've got a good link back to headquarters for scores coming back and real-time score reporting. The HQ venue is a key work package, so Georgina's been assessing potential host HQ locations. This is where everybody will come at the beginning of the event. It will be the heartbeat of a WRTC, where everybody will meet, will have meetings, discuss the rules. There will even be trips out to places like Bletchley, Duxford, so that all the international guys coming to the UK get to take a flavour of the UK, and it's not just all about radio. But this will be defined fairly soon. We're doing a selection now of the HQ. We'll be making a decision on that hopefully fairly soon, hopefully by the end of the year we would expect, and then we'll be working very closely with that venue to mature the plan to make sure everything executes correctly. And all of this busy stuff going on is all for this very small activity that you can see just second up from the bottom, which will be the actual contest itself in July 26. And then, of course, we'll learn from the experience, conduct a lessons learned exercise so that we can pass on to the next host in 2030. So Lee headed up the exercise of defining which contests we're going to identify as qualifying events and allocate the number of points available. So these are the qualifying contests that commence this month with CQ Worldwide SSB, and there are 1,000 points available there, and there'll be 2 CQ Worldwide SSBs, as there will CW. And then we've got 2024 with quite a few. It's a very busy year for qualifying candidates. And then the final 2 contests in 2025, ARRL CW and ARRL SSB. And there is a weighting for those points. Obviously, so as you're competing in your area, so all the areas are defined all around the world with DXCC entities within those areas, but there is also a weighting for the categories. So these are the category weightings. We've made a little bit of adjustment on this. we decided to adjust the single low power weighting. I think it was previously 0.90 up to 0.95 now. Just trying to bring it a little bit more in line with the WRTC contest format itself. We didn't feel like we could increase it entirely to 1.0 weighting. We needed to keep a distinction between high power and low power, and it's all about that sort of policing of people bending the rules and claiming that they're entering 100 watts when they're actually running a lot more power. So we felt like we needed to keep that separation. But these are the category separations. So multi, as you would expect, holds the lowest weighting of the available points because obviously, generally in a multi environment you'd have many team operators, and this is more about your performance. So we have to cap that somewhere. The team breakdown. So we are planning on 50 teams in total, which is broken down by 42 qualifying teams. We have one wild card, which I'll explain in a moment. The previous champions automatically get an invitation to 2026. So that will be the team that achieved gold in July. Youth. So we've got 4 dedicated youth teams, and these will qualify by being under the age of 26 at the time of WRTC 2026. And we'll have at least 2 sponsored teams. We're not entirely sure how many sponsored teams. Ideally, this number would be 0, I think, because this is we're trying to align this as closely as possible with the Olympics, right? And you can't sponsor your way into the Olympics, right? So we wanted to try and keep this as low as possible, but it is actually quite an important revenue stream. So we didn't want to cut it off entirely because it could actually be the difference between us being able to run the project and actually having quite a serious financial issue. So we had to be realistic about it, and this is what we came up with. The wild card is there for at the point of making some decisions at the end and defining the teams, whether there was somebody that actually performed exceptionally well, but for one reason or the other didn't actually end up receiving an invitation as a qualifier. So we wanted to leave some maneuverability there to allow that invitation. This is the breakdown of the areas with the number of teams. So this is a bit of a minefield, really, and Lee did a fantastic job with this because his analysis with diving into the results of numerous contests over a long period of time and actually saying, well, we need to maybe make that change, and you're never going to get everyone happy with this, but I'm very confident that he's nailed this as best as he possibly can. So Lee brought to the organising committee his proposal on this. We then took it to the sanctioning committee for their endorsement, and there were a few questions that came back, and we've made one announcement more recently on some changes about how we calculate scores in an area. For some reasons, there are some reasons why geographically there's this thing about keeping the area with a defined set of countries within it, but then for score comparison purposes only, you have a sub area within an overall area. So what I mean by that is, for instance, one of the ones that we've decided on recently is the split between Scandinavia and the Baltics. Now there's quite a substantial latitude divide between the Baltics and certainly mid and northern Scandinavia, and we decided that for score comparison purposes, it would be sensible to calculate them separate, independent of each other. But we still maintain 2 teams overall, so it will still be the highest teams scoring that will earn them a place as a team leader. So we've made some tweaks on that. We have a dedicated UK area, so and that's generally what's done. That the host nation would have a host team that qualify, and that would be a shame if we didn't, I think. We have selection criteria, question and answers video, and also a whole raft of Q&A on the website. So hopefully that should address any queries that may arise from the selection criteria. So each team leader, when they qualify, have the very important decision to make about who they will select as their teammate, because this is a two-person team. So there are some criteria for the teammate in that they can be anywhere in the world. They don't have to be from your country or from your area. They can be anywhere in the world. However, they must have scored at least 3,000 points in the qualification process, because we didn't want people that weren't actually working for it or didn't have a desire to compete in WRTC. We want those people that want to be there and that have met a minimum standard. The same disqualification rules apply for teammates and team leader candidates. And if the teammate did not submit an application to be selected as a team leader, an application may be submitted after being selected by a team leader. So there's a few criteria there. Now, we have to make sure that during WRTC, these operators are doing everything by the book, and so we will assign them referees. Now, there'll be an application process for referees. Referees can come from all over the world, and that will become live. The application process for that will become live a year before the event, roughly, sometime in 2025. So the referee will be trained, and we will make sure that they are educated on what is allowed, what isn't allowed, and they have the power to intervene with the operators to correct them and report back to the organising committee any wrongdoing. So we are very focused on youth, and we had Jamie M0SDV and Philip DJ6SP in WRTC in Italy this year, and they did exceptionally well, and they had some very challenging operating conditions, and the weather was exceptionally hot, but they did ever so well, and they had a very well engineered station which Olaf helped them with. And so we're very keen to promote that aspect and to, as I said, build a foundation for the future. Some of you may know Alan G4DJX. Now, Alan is a headmaster of a school in St Albans, a secondary school, and he now actually oversees, I think it's 7 schools in the area. So I'm going to be working with Alan to build a program for youth to actually get some school trips up and to actually engage in some presentations and some practical exercises, do some operating at the HQ venue and get excited about this WRTC event, and so that they can take that back and propagate that in the school. So that's something that we'll be working with Alan to define over the coming couple of years. So WRTC, as I said, East Anglia, and the main reason for that is because it's geographically acceptable to us. It's very flat land, generally speaking, and puts itself in a position as an ideal candidate for WRTC. We have to be very careful with site selection because we need to eliminate any variables as much as possible. We need to find 55 sites, 50 for the teams and then 5 backup. We need about 10% contingency on that. We may possibly find some sites in Essex and Cambridgeshire, but it is probably, if we can, confine it to Suffolk and Norfolk. So that's Andy PIQ's #1 responsibility. So this is an example of USA. So they started to do this in site clusters. So we'll probably do this where we'll have 3 or potentially 4 sites within a very close proximity. Now, bearing in mind, we're only talking about 100-watt stations here, so we can get away with separating these by about 500 meters. So that presents itself with some benefits. So it allows us to actually have a management tent central to these sites, which means that personnel resource we have more opportunity with that we can deploy a site team to look after a number of sites. And this is what a typical site will look like. So we'll have a mast, we'll have a Yagi, a tri-band Yagi, a 40-meter wire dipole, an 80-meter wire dipole separated centrally on the mast. There'll be a generator, an operating tent, probably some sort of management team tent for sleeping, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But we need 55 of these, so it's actually quite a daunting undertaking when you think that we need to acquire all of the hardware, build all of the hardware, and man it for the period of the event, which is about a week long. So the type of sites that we'll be looking for: potentially town, country parks, recreation areas, conservation land, even back gardens that are large enough, and orchards, farms, these kind of areas. Decommissioned military bases have been used previously, and even live airfields have been used before. So there may be some field day sites that radio clubs in the southeast of England have been using, so they will be ideal candidates. Now we need to make sure that these sites are suitable. So we will run the IRU contest in 2025 using the actual antennas, a selection of the actual antennas that we will use in 26. We'll use tools such as the reverse beacon network to gain signal reports from those sites, to allow us to easily eliminate those that are showing really strong or very weak compared to the other sites. We can use logs, these logs from, to take those logs public from 2025 to provide an opportunity for people to learn about propagation and where they're likely to want to beam and which band they want to be on at any one time. And as I said, we'll eliminate those which are not in line with the sort of baseline level of where we want to be in terms of signal strength around the world, but also with noise, and we need to be mindful that noise can come and go during the night or during the day, and that can change. So that's why we will have 5 backup sites. So for each station, we need volunteers to build the antennas, erect the antennas. We need security for the team and also to help them with feeding them, food and water, refueling the generator, setting up for the contest, and addressing any questions from any visitors or the press. So there will be a select number of visitors that will go out to the operating sites for a number of reasons. So just a high-level overview of the event itself. This is what our current plan is. So teams will arrive for registration on the Wednesday, and on the Wednesday and Thursday we'll be conducting a number of meetings at the headquarters venue, and we'll have some trips available. There'll be that the volunteers will be performing the antenna build and the installation. On the Thursday, July 9th, we'll have the official opening ceremony. And then the teams will draw their sites, call signs and referees on the Friday. So this is a day before the contest. All of the teams will do a draw, and they'll pick an envelope, 3 envelopes. One will be their site, so their site will not be known to them until a day before the contest. They will not know their referees, so they'll get allocated a referee at that point. And they'll take an envelope with their call sign, and their call sign will not be revealed to the team until probably about 5 or 10 minutes before the start of the contest, just to give them enough time to program their CW keys, their voice keys for the contest itself, but also it eliminates the opportunity for sharing that information of which team have which call sign, and then you then can eliminate cheerleading and cheating and potential issues. So that's why it's done that way. So then the teams will travel to the sites once that draw is complete, and they will set up their stations. So the teams are responsible for bringing their transceivers, their logging PCs, their filters, their band decoders, whatever it is they want to bring. They're responsible for designing their station and bringing it to WRTC. We provide them with the antennas, with cables coming in, 2 tables, 2 chairs, a couple of power meters, and a team, and then it's down to them. So this was the 2018 call sign reveal. So we are going to be working on defining what call sign set we want, and so that obviously will involve engaging with Ofcom and trying to come up with something that's attractive, maybe something that hasn't been used before as a prefix, but they will only be revealed the week of WRTC. And then on the Saturday and Sunday itself, of course, is the actual contest itself. So it will begin at 1 p.m. on Saturday, and then 1 p.m. on the Sunday. There'll be real-time scores coming in, so we can at any one time know where every team is sitting, and that will be made available on the online. So you'll actually be able to see something like this. Obviously, all the scores here are 0 because this was before the contest started, but this will show you where each team operator sits. The one thing that you will not know is which call sign they are using. And then on the Sunday, the contest ends, everyone packs up, packs their stations down, comes back to the HQ, and the log checking begins at 1:01. And of course, unlike a traditional contest where that process has quite a lot of time to be conducted, we're up against the clock to do the adjudication in a very short period of time. And so we will gain entrants from all around the world to submit their logs for the IARU contest, and we can use those to do that. And then on the Monday, the closing ceremony and the presentation of the medals. So this is going to be a big party, and we've got some good ideas about how this is going to be run. But it will be similar to what you would expect from the likes of an Olympics award ceremony. And there'll be medals not just for bronze, silver, and gold, of course, but also the highest scoring sideband entrants, the highest scoring CW, those that had best accuracy, all these kind of things. So it's a really good party. So managing risks. So there are some key risks that we need to be aware of, and we're constantly thinking about these. So obviously we've got the political unrest situation, which could present us with some challenges, and that certainly was the case for Italy. Pandemic restrictions, hopefully it won't return again, but we have to be mindful that that has surfaced before. Adverse weather during the actual event itself, yes, that could potentially give us a problem. You never know, do you, here in July? It could be nice, hopefully, but again, that's why we would have backup hardware and backup sites. We could have a lack of volunteers, so we could get a good uptake initially, but actually when it comes to it, we might fall short, and that is a concern. So we need to work very hard on building that team and making people feel part of this project. Lower than required funds. So it's difficult to put an exact number on it, and Fred's building the budget, but we're looking at somewhere between £500,000 and £600,000 to run this project. It's a big undertaking. Obviously, it runs every 4 years, so there are some repeated supporters, but we do have to work very hard because some of that is nation-specific. So we're working with our UK opportunities. We have risks with noise from at the sites and from other stations that we have to be mindful of, and potential IT failures we could be faced with. So there was this thing in Italy where on sideband, to try and level the fact that you get spotted on CW pretty much instantaneously these days, having a sideband mechanism that can do that was introduced. And so I'm trying to think of the criteria. I think it was 3 QSOs on 1 frequency on sideband put you on the spot, put a spot out for you. If that system fails and that data is not coming back to HQ to allow that spot to take place, that could generate an imbalance between the teams. So we need to be very careful that anything we implement is fair. And there could be team logistical problems. We're bringing people from all over the world into the UK, and flights could be cancelled, people could be diverted, we could lose their equipment in transit, all these kind of things. So we need to be ready. But we will need to make it clear to the operators, the qualifying operators, that they need to have their own contingency plans for these kind of things as well. Fundraising, so we've got lots that we're working on, corporate sponsors, radio clubs, individuals, the sponsored teams that I mentioned previously. We'll do this thing with tent sponsors that's been done many times before. We'll hold raffles all the way up to the event, potentially auctions, and then we're going to be left with all this hardware at the end that we need to find a home for. So that's a potential for that as well, for fundraising. So how can we get involved? So promotion, fundraising, assisting with airport runs during the actual event, driving operators to the sites from the HQ. You could be a station manager or a member of the station's team. VIP driving, so we can have obviously some quite high-profile sponsors that will be welcoming. Emergency transportation, and of course there's going to be a whole load of logistics at headquarters with a big IT set up there. So there's lots of opportunities, and there are probably more than I've listed here. So we are a special interest group with the Radio Society of Great Britain, so we're registered, and we have a table upstairs here today, so please come up and see us if you'd like to discuss anything else about the project. If you'd like to get involved, come and see us, or if you have any questions about the event, we'd be delighted to see you. We're on most of the main social media platforms, so please follow us if that's your thing. We have our website, wrtc2026.org, and we're also going to be releasing videos on YouTube and Facebook and on these channels as well. So please stay tuned, and we'd appreciate your support in any way that you possibly can, and we hope that you're excited as we are about hosting this in the UK. Thank you very much.
So are there any questions?
Mark M0KYB. Hello, Mark. Thanks for that presentation. And good luck with the project. I wanted to ask, if you're not a CW operator, do you think you stand any chance at all of qualifying?
Qualifying as a team leader is going to be tough, I must admit. I think you're going to need to be, a proficient operator on both modes, on CW and sideband. I haven't done the sums, but it may potentially be possible to obtain 3,000 points as purely a sideband operator to qualify as a potential teammate. I haven't done the sums on it. I'm not sure if you have, Lee, but that could be possible.
I haven't done the sums yet. And in the past, I think there have been operators at WRTC that have been single mode, or one operator has done one mode, another operator has done the other. But I think it will also depend on where you are in the world, which qualification areas, as there'll be, say, different amounts of competition depending on where you are. So I think, so it's not to say it's impossible, but I think, it will be a considerable challenge. And having skills in both modes, I think, is certainly the way for success, depending on, considering how many people there will be chasing relatively few slots.
Any other questions? Yep.
Thanks, Mark. John G4IRN. Thanks for the interesting talk. Can I have a little clarification on the qualification scoring process? It might be one for Lee, I don't know. So as I understand it, if you take the CQ Worldwide's 1,000 points up for grabs, I remember the top category you had was the single all band or single band, I think is what it said. So does that mean then that if you come top in your, say you do a single up all band and you come top in your qualifying area, you get 1,000 points? Does it equally mean that if you do a single band, 20 meters, say, and you come top in your qualifying area, you would also get 1,000 points?
Do you want to take that, Lee? You're the man for this.
It'll be a short answer, but yes.
Any more questions? Yeah, one over there. I think that will almost be the last one.
Yeah, hi Mark, it's Ian G3YBY. I just wondered why there was a waiting on 2024 contest as opposed to 2025. There were less qualifying contests in 2025, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, so we in order to have completed the final adjudication process of the last qualifying contest, we need enough time between that point in